It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzel Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club. Today in the program, we'll be talking about the incident that happened in Parliament a few days ago when Parliament was debating the patriotic bill that is being, I think it has been passed by the House now and is going to go to the Senate. Honorable Mliswa stood to contribute, and in the debate, he mentioned Gukurahundi and the Speaker or the acting Speaker of Parliament, Temba Mliswa, found it offensive that he had mentioned the word Gukurahundi, and he was eventually ejected out of the House. And a lot of people, of course, they were shocked. There was on social media and everywhere, there was uproar. Why 43, almost 40 years after Gukurahundi, we're celebrating 40, or we're commemorating 40 years since Gukurahundi happened this year, and someone will still find the word Gukurahundi offensive. Worse, when we actually have a process where the chiefs have been asked by the president, and they actually commissioned the process to go out into the community and talk to the people on how to solve the issue of Gukurahundi and bring in, we know we have NPRC as well, that has been dealing with the issue. And in 2017, the current president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, said people are free to talk about the issue of Gukurahundi and find closure. So why was this an issue, and why was it offensive? Honorable Mliswa, welcome to the program. And we've also been joined by Reverend Skalu, who has been dealing with the issues of peace building in Zimbabwe. Honorable, I'll start with you. Your incident, what really transpired? I know we have seen it on social media, we've read the Hansard, but someone might not have come across it.
No, listen, I was equally shocked. I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that ZANU-PF, which is the ruling government, it's a fact. So Gukurahundi happened under ZANU-PF, it's a fact. Are you with me? So why one would see it as not being proper, and her point was you cannot name a political party in parliament. That's not true. As long as it's a fact, if it's a fact, you can name the political party, and it's not a secret that the ruling party, the government of the day, is the ZANU-PF government. So why would it be so difficult for one to accept that? When we talk about Gukurahundi, we cannot divorce it and separate from ZANU-PF, because it was the government of the day. Being the government of the day, it happened, and they have their own reasons, which I was not looking for. I was looking at basically, coming up with a debate which say, yes, we are doing this patriotic bill and so forth. So how patriotic are we before we come up with the law? The leaders themselves, how patriotic are they? If they are allowed Gukurahundi to happen, if they're part of Gukurahundi, and at the same time, if you go to the constitution, the preamble does not talk about patriotism, talks about a national liberation struggle, which means ZIPRA was involved, ZANA was involved. So if they were involved, that patriotism is clear, the nationalistic approach is clear, and everybody's got a DNA, which is patriotism and nationalism in them. So who qualifies to say the other Joshua Nkomo was labeled as not patriotic, not nationalistic? He ended up absconding and leaving the country wearing a dress, yet he was father of Zimbabwe. And yet, he sacrificed for this country. The late Robert Gabriel was kicked out of ZANU-PF. The current president was kicked out of ZANU-PF. Comrade Joyce Mjuru was kicked out of ZANU-PF. So are we saying they are patriotic? They are not nationalistic. So why then should we have this? And I think we have to look inward as a people to say, but Gukurahundi itself, what happened? If we are going to deal with that, why don't we deal with the people who did Gukurahundi? If we are serious about coming up with a law that will have people incarcerated for associating with everyone. Not only that, there is a provision in the Constitution, Section 58, I think, to 68, talks about freedom of expression, where the media is involved. And it also talks about freedom of association and all that. So if anybody does anything outside the law, we've got different acts and laws which can deal with that, not to then ban the whole bush because of a rabbit. It does not work like that. And not to sit down and feel that we must bring laws which personally target people, which are personal, not for good governance of the country. When we're passing laws we look at the good governance of the country, there's corruption happening. You talk about hurting the sovereignty of the country, damaging the country. Has corruption not done that? Why don't you come up with a law which is much more punitive in terms of dealing with the corruption, which is there? We're not pushing that. Corruption has definitely injured people. Not only that, if you talk about Gukurahundi, you cannot ignore it. As you rightly said, the president is talking about it. So we have to support him from a legislative point of view, because we are the voice of the people. And I was just being the voice of the people in bringing it up and saying it must also be attended to. But those people who did it too, why don't we find a way of having to deal with them if we want to now come up with a law that deals with people who are free to associate, to speak with anybody outside Zimbabwe? There's no one who's a sellout. There's no one who's a sellout. That law can only come about by the sellouts themselves who are not patriotic. The founding principles of the struggle are the ones which are critical in making sure that Zimbabwe maintains its track and it's clearly on the roadmap and so forth. The founding principles are what are critical at the end of the day. That's how I see it. But Honorable Mavetere, for her own decision, I don't know where she got it from. She said, I could have said, I even said if I've said anything which is not in line with my conduct as a parliamentarian, I'm prepared to withdraw. But I cannot withdraw that Gukurahundi was done under the government of ZANU-PF. The same way I can say the current economic problems that we are facing and inflation is under the government of ZANU-PF. I'm right. I'm not wrong. So you can't tell me that I must now leave. You've stifled the debate. You've allowed a situation where we who speak and represent people, then are not able to. If we cannot now speak in that house, who then will speak for the people?
Yeah, you mentioned very important issues, because you talk. I mean, it is a fact that Gukurahundi happened, and the reason why we have all the NPRC, the chiefs process, the president, since he came to power, I think he has come to Bulawayo twice, if not thrice, to meet civil society, to meet chiefs, so that they find common. He actually launched the Gukurahundi roadmap, where there was the talking points and all these documents to try and solve the problem that has happened. And it is not a secret that it happened. It is not a secret that people have died. This is why even the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, called it a moment of madness. So before I move to Reverend Mliswa, is it because of ignorance that the acting speaker, Mavetere, didn't know that Gukurahundi happened, or it's arrogance?
No, it's one. I think there's immaturity. I think she's a young honorable with a promising career. She's on the speaker's panel, but these issues also require, those who within wisdom. The white-headed men are required to handle such issues, and the speaker's panel has such. If the honorable speaker, honorable advocate Jacob Francis Zundamlimo Mudenda was there, he could have allowed it to continue, and she cut me short. She never allowed me to continue. There was no point of order from a parliamentarian. If I was wrong, because you are prepared, you are allowed to rise on the point of order. But Honorable Mliswa is out of order by bringing up the Gukurahundi, saying it's under ZANU-PF. The ZANU-PF people did not object to that. So why on herself did she do that? So to me, I think there's quite a lot in terms of us separating national issues and party issues. And she probably did it to appease the leadership, not understanding and knowing that the leadership itself, which has His Excellency Comrade Idi Mnangagwa as President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and the First Secretary and President of ZANU-PF, has initiated it. If there's anything, we are complimenting him by bringing it up in Parliament and talking about it. I don't know if ignorance then comes in, like you say, at the end of the day, but a lot of immaturity, ignorance, and also bootlicking and not putting national interests first. Because when you're sitting on that chair, it's no longer about the party. It's about the nation itself. It's about the national. That's why it's an assembly, okay, which pushes national interests. So I would agree, ignorance, immaturity, and also bootlicking, and that's how they go about it in these political parties. I've been there before. You must appease your masters so that you are recognized. But at the same time, you know, that very same party suffers because their manifesto is about unity, peace, and development. That's what ZANU-PF has: unity, peace, and development. So is this not about peace? Is this not about unity? And how can the development happen when there's no peace, unity, and development? So she contradicts her own party's manifesto and standing.
That's quite critical, and of course, you mentioned the speaker Mudenda himself. Mudenda was one of the first people when he was still the governor of Mat North to actually set up a committee of the chairpersons of ZANU-PF in Matabele, and that met the president Robert Mugabe in the early 80s to highlight the issues of Gukurahundi. And reading Sipa's book on this, it actually said after their meeting there was a movement, and the 50th Brigade was moved from these areas and to other areas. And then, so Mudenda was in the thick of it. He knows, he participated in these meetings. Let me bring you, Rev, here that we saw Honorable Mliswa being ejected from Parliament because he mentioned Gukurahundi. As a reverend and as someone who has been involved in peace building and Gukurahundi issues, what was your reaction?
Thank you for that question, Ndebele, and thank you, Honorable Mliswa, first of all, for raising this matter in Parliament. That's greatly, greatly appreciated and applauded, you know, so that it becomes a national conversation in the august house of this land. Thank you so much. I can thank you a million times for that. But when I saw the video clips of Honorable Mliswa being ejected from Parliament for raising the issue of Gukurahundi, for me, two things came. Is it that the ruling party is confused on its position on this matter? Is it that the Honorable Speaker is against the president? Is it that there is a way that they want this thing done, which is not known by members of Parliament and is not known by the people involved in dealing with Gukurahundi? And many questions will come. I can go on and on. But that was a surprise for me, to be honest with you. It was a great surprise of how could that be done? Because the president, as you have already alluded to the fact that the president has mandated this to be a national conversation. He has launched the Chiefs Council, National Chiefs Council, to deal with it, and they have already started the process. Then why is Parliament perturbed by that? And it's really worrying, because it creates a sense that people will begin to think that the Chiefs process is then a sham. It's a PR process. It's a joke. It discredits the Chiefs process, which was sanctioned and mandated by the head of state, and that is worrying. But well, such are peace issues. You know, you will always have what we call in peace building spoilers, those who will disturb the process that is meant to bring peace and healing in the nation. But let me also underscore the point that it could also be an issue of ignorance. Honorable Mliswa and Ebele, how Gukurahundi happened, what actually happened. It could be an issue of ignorance. People can be hearing the word Gukurahundi people were killed in such part of the country, full stop. They don't have details. Because we are in this conversation, let me just give you in 2, 3, 4 things that women and girls were gang raped in the presence of their fathers, brothers, and husbands. Virgin girls had their private parts opened with a bayonet. While it's bleeding, they were raped. Women were forced to have sex with their own children, were forced to kill their babies. I know of a colleague whose sister was married in a polygamous marriage, and they were asked to put their babies in a traditional grinding wooden mat, what we call it, ingika. What's the English word for ingika? They were meant to crush them. Yes, they were meant to crush their babies. 2 babies were crushed in ingika. And do people think that is normal? Even anybody who is normal, how do you react to that? Women had their private parts in the burning firewood. Pregnant women were stripped of their bellies to kill the fetus because they believed the fetus is a child of a dissident. Thousands of women, men were forced into grass-thatched houses, grass-thatched huts, and they were burnt to death. Boys were killed. Their fathers were killed. They were forced to watch their mothers and sisters being raped. Men killed, thrown in disused mines, and men disappeared, and some have not come back. Men were humiliated. Others had their private parts skinned and then cut off. And many other things that I can't mention, including children who were born out of rape. Their fathers are the soldiers that raped people. And these people suffer a shamed identity. And in essence, if I can even make it more complex, these guys by paternal birth are Shona, but a result of a rape, and many more. Let me leave the rest. The details are there. So if somebody would reject or object to such a conversation, I find it strange, if not weird. You know, and I'm like, what's really happening in this country? But we are a church, you know, a real and peaceful church will not avoid this. Sadly, the church is also divided like politicians. We've got others who are then defending and justifying such acts. I don't know what kind of demonic spirits are working in our land. But let's come to the church and the peace aspect that we support the chief's process. If that can be known even by Parliament, Honorable Mliswa is here, that the church, the real church and the peaceful church will support the chief's process to bring peace and healing on the subject of Gukurahundi. We know there will be arguments on its authenticity, genuineness, and the rest, but it's a process that is going on. Let's support and see how far we go with that. Then we'll begin to deal with issues when we have challenges on that. Then the church will also call upon authorities, such as government, to remove all forms of intimidation, suppression, oppression, and ejecting people for raising critical national issues of national interest for that matter. We also would urge government to allow victims and survivors to speak freely. Honestly speaking, if they eject Honorable Mliswa from Parliament, how do you expect an old woman in Lupane, Silwane, in Cholocho, Mkonyani to speak about such issues if they can eject an honorable? You understand how it reverses the gains that we have already done under the new administration, that perhaps this issue can now be dealt with. Allow victims to vent out their emotions and heal their memories. Allow the conversation on Gukurahundi, as it was opened by the president, not to stifle it. Let Parliament deal with it. Allow Parliament to come up with a policy that addresses issues of freedom about this matter.
Rev, I think I'll just hold you there. I know Honorable Mliswa is busy campaigning, so I just want to come in briefly, then we can talk. So Honorable Mliswa, before I just let you go, I know it's the season has begun. You already on the ground campaigning, so we don't want to hold you for long. My question to you is, Mliswa, is like Rev has pointed out, that there is the chief's process that is going on, and if the chief's process is going on, that is supposed to talk about Gukurahundi, and that report is supposed to come to Parliament at one point or another, and the parliamentarian can, with privileges, cannot mention the Gukurahundi in Parliament. Doesn't make the whole issue a farce? How is a villager in Cholocho going to be protected in talking about what happened to them?
I don't want to. I think what I'm grateful that the president started the process. Whether it's the right process or not, but is trying to more or less reach out and make sure it's done. There's also the question of the chiefs. Some believe they are compromised, they're given cars. Are they going to do this in a manner which is proper? And then there's also the churches themselves who are also critical in this. When people spoke about a commission of inquiry or truth and reconciliation commission, it encompasses a lot. It has to be an entity or a union that people have confidence in, first of all, because there's no point in carrying on when people have no confidence in it. You know, the same way you have passed the patriotic law, but there was too much outcry. It has not become a good law that people respect. If it's a good law, there will be no controversy. So the chiefs are critical. The church is critical with me, and other political players too. The war veterans are critical, you know, and all that. So that composition is the one that will will be able to come up with a report which hopefully people will have confidence in. Without that, it becomes a problem. Talking about it is critical. The thing process itself has not started. We can only talk about issues which I think of national interest. Whether an inquiry is going on or not, I think it's not something that can stop one. Parliament itself represents people. So you can also pick up certain things from what Parliament has said in terms of the Hansard and so forth. It's only when it's in the courts of law where we cannot talk about that, from what I know, because it's actually subjects. But an inquiry, I don't know of any such law. So it can still be spoken about. And if it's a fact, why not? Because it's an inquiry. An inquiry can get information from all sorts of corners to ensure that what they've put together is credible and is right, is factual at the end of the day. So nothing stops me talking about it. It was more or less to do with the patriotic bill itself, that how patriotic and nationalistic have we been as a country to our own people, first of all. That was part of my debate, and that's the narrative that I was pushing to say, but Gukurahundi happened. Okay, and to a region which was also participating in the liberation struggle through ZAP. I with you. Did they deserve that? And so forth. So much was happening all over and everything. Like you say, the former president and later Comrade Mugabe talks about being a moment of madness. So it's an admission that what happened was wrong. Are you with me? So this is what I'm saying, that if we're said to be patriotic and nationalist, we must also be able to accept what we did, which was wrong. Patriotism calls for that. To say this is wrong, this is what is not meant for our people because of the patriotism and nationalistic approach that we have. So it touches on quite a number of issues. But like I said, it's difficult. While the chiefs have been given that mandate to do it, the confidence of the people. The church is respected, whether you like it or not. You cannot miss out some of the war veterans, some of the elders in the village. So the composition is what is critical. But it's an issue which you cannot ignore. And it's good that the president has started it. And what is just critical, for me, I always say, it takes a leader who will say, I was part of the system, and because I was part of the system, I also had work to do. We did it. In retrospect, we're not supposed to do it. We were wrong. We apologize to the people of Zimbabwe and the families. Never shall it happen again. That all alone is good enough. That alone, all this thing of trying to, and then when you apologize, then you come up with a modus operandi on how you are going to heal the people, how you're going to compensate them. And maybe the commission of inquiry then is seized with that. A sorry does not need a commission of inquiry. A sorry needs you as a person, as a leader, uniting the people. Like I said, the president started it, but the president equally can say, a lot of things happened. I was part of this government too and everything. But in retrospect, what happened was not supposed to happen. I'm very sorry personally. And on behalf of the nation and on behalf of ZANU-PF, we totally say this was wrong. It was not supposed to happen. It will never happen again. Comrade, that just sorry. You saw this. There's got to be sincerity. Speak to the people. Your heart will be felt. Your heart will be felt. And then you have national prayer. Got the Reverend here with many other leaders coming together and praying and saying, and God forgives, and we move on. That's why we have the church. God forgives, we move on. We start to build our nation. This is why at times we don't go far as a nation, because there's this spiritual thing hangover where there's so many things that happen which were not supposed to happen. And God requires you to go before him and say, sorry, and certainly you're forgiven, and we move on. And you see a Zimbabwe that you've never seen before.
Oh, thanks, I nearly said Reverend. Thanks, Honorable. I know you're already in the election mode, and we wish you luck in the campaigning, and hope to see you in the next parliament, because you are one of those people who speak their mind, and this one voice that we don't want to miss in the next parliament, because you raise critical issues, and it is quite important that you raised the issue of Gukurahundi in parliament, and today we are debating about something that you did. Not so many people are brave like you. We've had the opposition talking about Gukurahundi when they come to campaign, but hardly have they raised the issue in parliament.
I want to say to the Rev before I go that I challenge the church to participate in politics. God himself was a shrewd politician, was a shrewd businessman. He was in control of everything. And we don't want where violence is happening, they're quiet. They must be able to approach the head of state and say, for us to have credible elections, we must respect the people's rights, and be able to have a conducive environment. The church must do that. It's not good meeting the president and not having a caucus with him. The president belongs to the Methodist Church of Zimbabwe, which I belong to. There's nothing wrong in getting them to have a meeting, to arrange a meeting with all churches there. And they talk to him, the bishops, they talk to him that we're going towards elections. We cannot have blood spilling. We can't have, people, being abusive and threatening and violent, and all that. The church is powerful. The church must ask political leaders to say, you're under God. And while you're under God, we will not support any leader who does anything which is ungodly. Why don't they say that, so that we don't have the Gukurahundi happening? They must prevent this. Prevention is better than cure. That's my message to the Reverend in the church.
Thank you, Honorable. Rev, just as we get to conclude this discussion, the Honorable Mliswa talked about one important thing. He says sorry does not need a commission of inquiry. And there's the church, what do you say about
that? Thank you. Certainly, sorry does not need a commission of inquiry. I reiterate those words. But secondly, we have already proposed the way this can be dealt with as church, and I think government is aware of that these are the processes. People simply need to talk about this. They need an apology. They need an apology that will be followed by legislation that will ensure that never again will such a thing happen. And the commission of inquiry would be trying to establish what really happened and the gravity and the effect it had on people, and who planned such things for what purposes. Then we can have a conversation as a nation. Then they present the facts before us. Look at the TRC in South Africa. Then they present the facts. Then we engage with the facts. What do we do given these facts? But if government is proactive and positive about this, it can start itself to apologize, begin to have what we once called compensatory development, which literally means trying to bring those areas that were affected by the Gukurahundi and which were left behind for the first 10 years of our independence. When Zimbabwe was thriving, other parts of our country were going down. So this is what we would really think, that it's easy to say, I acknowledge it. Actually, we are acknowledging by some actions and words without coming out open, and because coming out open and will allow people to engage openly without fear. But now, if we are apologizing in secret through actions and without words, it's not an apology. We have got an international standard of an apology, which we can only craft as well, and we engage with the people and the nation and say, this happened, as Mliswa said, this happened in such a place. We participated as government and as the state, and this is what we did. And having done that and looking in retrospect, as he said, we are saying that this was wrong. And on the basis of that, then they tender their apology in the style that it is expected internationally. And then the matter is done. Then the commission of inquiry, whether it comes at that stage or even before or after, then deals with the nuts and bolts of what happened and how to deal with those issues that I mentioned. The issues of shamed identity, birth certificates, death certificates, and many others that the government can go on to do that. But then the international community, or the independent commission, will then seek to understand, was this truly a genocidal, methodical thing that was executed? and who were the crafters of this, then justice can be served for both the victims and the survivors, and also maybe for the perpetrators or others. But that is another stage which cannot be done anytime soon, given that the current president is the one sanctioning that this thing be dealt with, and people must concentrate on the time frame and the context and say we can achieve so much with the current head of state and find solutions for some, I repeat, underline some of the issues that are before us. And I think I do agree with Honorable Mliswa.
Yeah, as we bring to close this program, I know we are now on election mode, and of course, sometimes Zimbabwean elections are not peaceful. I would start with you, Honorable Mliswa. What is your message to the people during elections when it comes to peace, and just to make sure the elections are not violent and people don't lose their lives?
You know, I'm of the thinking that we don't need elections in this country for a while. We need to find ourselves. We need to love each other. There's so much healing needed. Gukurahundi is part of it, and we've not taken time to really heal. You know, so many victims. There's also healing needed from the perpetrators. I liked what the Reverend said in that, you know, it's a two-pronged approach. There are the victims and the perpetrators. And I'm not saying that the perpetrators must be persecuted. No. But they're also forgiven in the process. They also say, we are sorry. Are you with me? So we're not looking at that. So there's a lot of healing needed. You know, there are too many undertones which people don't talk about. And I think the church, and I like the Reverend Spirit, that it must speak for the people, because in not speaking for the people, the country will never be the same. And it will never be the Zimbabwe that we want. You know, we are a blessed nation with great people, great intellect, and great institutions. But again, the people, the institutions now are run by the individuals. Individuals are more powerful than institutions. So this is where now you see, when it comes to election, institutions are failing to do their jobs because the individual's desire is important. They want to be appointed to a certain position. They want to say, I made you in president because I did this in this institution. We must be like America. America is America because of these strong institutions, not because of individuals. Whether Donald Trump was president, they committed a crime, they take their time to investigate. The institutions will come to you later. And so peaceful elections are needed. Already there's too much talk, Zach, the delimitation, and whoever wins, they're like, there's controversy again, we are taking each other to court and all that. So, you know, the constitution is very clear about a referendum. I would say, let the president ask the people, do we want elections now, or we suspend elections for 10 years and there's a transitional government? That's where the transitional government comes in. The church is also involved in the transitional government. Key stakeholders are in. Let's run and let's build the country again. If we have to amend the constitution, let's amend it and come up with laws which are good for the governance of the people. So, like I've said, Reverend and your fellow colleagues, it's time that someone ask politicians to say that you must conduct your campaigns peacefully, but whichever politician does not do that, incites violence, you must expose him in the church and say, this politician is not good. Whoever is corrupt, do the same as well. So it's now the church that must take charge.
Thank you, Honorable, for that, and thank you for taking your time to be with us this morning. And lastly, Rev, what is your message to people? We are towards the elections, and usually temperatures rise during elections.
Let me use 4 words, 4 phrases. Number 1, violence disables the nation, and it will disable the nation even after elections. Violating people's rights is violating God. Remember, when the president came into power, he said the voice of the people is the voice of God. The violence against the people is the violence against God. We need to revisit the church's call for a Sabbath. Remember, we called the nation for a Sabbath, where we said, let's put aside the elections. Let's have a national dialogue. Let's deal with our problems. We have done one thing over and over again, and we are expecting different results, and it's not going to be. Let's have a national dialogue. Then let's have peace pledges should elections come, if they are definitely coming, because the dates are set. Let's have a peace pledge from political parties. And I will indeed engage with other colleagues here to say how best can we deal with peace pledges to make sure that politicians pledge that they will be very peaceful during this election, and any political persuasion that is anti-peace must be, people must not vote for such a party. Peace be with the people of Zimbabwe, and peace be with you all. I thank you.
On that peaceful note, I would like to thank Honorable Temba Mliswa and Reverend Scarlett Bele. This morning we're discussing not only elections, but also the issue of Gukurahundi. Why is it so sensitive? Why does someone find it offensive that an honorable member would talk about Gukurahundi in Parliament? Yet it's supposed to be the space where there is the freedom of speech. And it is a fact anyway that Gukurahundi happened. And let it be clear that Gukurahundi happened, and running away from it and not talking about it will not solve the issue. We run a risk that 5 generations from now or 2 generations from now will talk about things that they don't understand. I think our generation has an opportunity and a chance to deal with this issue and solve it, because if we don't, one way down the line, it will pop up. And those who were involved, those with the facts, will not be there. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and thank you for joining us. Have a good day.